On our top focus and on right now, a major setback to India. The Trump administration has revoked the 2018 sanctions waiver that allowed India to develop the Chabahar Port in Iran. The move is a part of the Trump administration's crackdown on international illegal financial networks that benefit the Iranian regime and its proxies in West Asia. The decision was announced in a release by the U.S. State Department. According to the release, the U.S. would sanction several individuals and entities based in Hong Kong and the UAE. Additionally, it would lift the exemptions to sanctions issued in 2018 as a part of its campaign of maximum pressure on Iran. Well, U.S. sanctions would apply to exempted countries, which also now includes India, starting September 29th. In 2018, under Trump's first term, the U.S. had exempted India from sanctions related to Chabahar Port, acknowledging its humanitarian and regional connectivity benefits. The exemptions had continued under the Biden regime as well. Now, the Chabahar Port in Iran is of immense strategic importance to New Delhi. The port provides India with a direct trade route to Afghanistan and Central Asia, bypassing Pakistan. So it, of course, provides a lot of economic and strategic initiatives to India. It also strengthens India's regional presence and offers an alternative to China's BRI. The revocation of the 2018 sanctions waiver is now expected to affect India, which in May 2024 signed a 10-year contract to operate a terminal at Chabahar Port. It may also expose Indian entities such as India Ports Global Limited to potential U.S. sanctions. That's under the Iran Freedom and Counter-Proliferation Act. This move could disrupt India's trade with Afghanistan and Central Asia and also key development projects in the region. For Indian companies, and compromise supports strategic importance, ultimately straining India-US ties and impacting India's economic and strategic interests. Now, the end of sanctions waiver for the Chabahar Port also comes at a time when New Delhi is facing additional U.S. tariffs for buying Russian oil. Trump said that he was a close friend of Prime Minister Modi. However, he would continue to impose the additional 25% tariffs on India.
I'm very close to India. I'm very close to the Prime Minister of India. I spoke to him the other day, wished him a happy birthday. We have a very good relationship. He put out a beautiful statement too. We have, but I said, I sanctioned them.
And well, for more on this, we're now being joined by Ambassador Dinkar Srivastava. He served as the former Indian ambassador to Iran and also led negotiations on Indian participation in Chabahar Port. He's also the author of Forgotten Kashmir, the other side of the line of control. Welcome to WION, Ambassador Srivastava. First up, of course, you've closely been a part of these negotiations of the Chabahar Port. With the revocation right now, what does it mean for India? What are the implications going forward?
Let me just mention the 10-year agreement which you mentioned was signed last year was actually signed in 2016. And I had negotiated it. I was given extension post-retirement to complete the negotiations. The agreement was signed a year later in the presence of our Prime Minister, which was for 10 years. But for certain reasons, certain commitments made by India were not fulfilled. And so the 10-year agreement was not operational. It was being extended on annual basis. Last year, it has been made operationalized partly. And again, it's back to the 10-year format. Now, the impact on this action by the U.S. administration is purely symbolic. Let's look at it in terms of impact on India first. India does not have any exports to Iran for last 3-4 years for the simple reason that there's no banking channel available During my time, I had negotiated a rupee payment deal which allowed import for crude oil, and that rupee payment was utilized by Iranian side for buying Indian goods. Since we stopped buying Iranian crude in the last 4-5 years, there are no rupee balances to finance this trade. So as of now, the impact on Indian trade or economy will be, let me put it directly, nil.
Okay.
There is the other aspect, and which is the access to Afghanistan. As you know, situation in Afghanistan has been in turmoil. Americans withdrew, and therefore they have lost interest in keeping this. Chabahar was a lifeline for Afghanistan. It still remains so. And it is also a lifeline for Central Asia. But since Americans have withdrawn from Afghanistan, so they don't have that consideration. Now, the third aspect is how far does this decision affect Iran? Because the US State Department's announcement is not in the context of US-India relations. They have made it very clear this is to put maximum pressure on Iran. Now, if you look at it from Iran's point of view, before this decision, or in fact, last 5 years straight figures, Chabahar accounted for barely 1% of Iranian maritime trade. Most of the Iranian maritime trade is in the West, handled by ports in the West like Bandar Abbas, port, or
Right.
up north, there's a Imam Khomeini port. So in terms of economy, again, Iranian economy, it has very, very marginal impact.
Right, Ambassador Srivastava, you speak of how the impact of the revocation will be nil on India, but I also want to touch upon the fact that this project was also seen as a strategic counterweight to the Gwadar port in Pakistan. So my question to you is that how does this decision by America reflect on India's strategic autonomy?
You know, I remember the first American statement in 2013 when we had just begun the Chabahar negotiations, and the US State Department spokesperson Victoria Nuland, who was a senior official in Biden administration till a couple of years ago, she said that US welcomes Chabahar project because it will integrate Afghanistan and possibly growing region of South Asia. The US consideration was that in the event of American withdrawal, Afghanistan should not drift back to Al-Qaeda and so on. I don't know how far their policy line has changed, because that it's not simply a question of India's strategic autonomy. I think US still has an interest to see that the country does not become host to the kind of terrorist groups which led to 9/11 attacks. You are right. There was a consideration that Chabahar would be a counterpoise to Gwadar. In fact, it was going to be a much more important port than Gwadar. Gwadar does not have a secure hinterland, which Chabahar does. Chabahar Port also has access to cheap oil and gas in Iran, which again Gwadar lacks.
Okay.
So Gwadar is no comparison to Chabahar, but this is certainly this decision certainly will help the Chinese, paradoxically.
Right, Ambassador Srivastava, thank you so much for joining us here on WION and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.